see, if you know a little bit about my background, I was in the US. I was studying there. I was working there for quite some time in management consulting. So back in 2003, there was a decision I had to make about moving back to India. And that was it was sort of two-pronged. One was it was for personal reasons because of my father's health. And second was I was getting a very interesting opportunity with the company called Writer Corporation. I know the family for a long time, and they were setting up their cash logistics business, which is the ATM replenishment business. And there was an opportunity for me to move back in as a business head. So, whilst I was in consulting, this was, an opportunity for me to get into a real business and actually sort of contribute, and at a very senior level. So that was, I think, a pivotal moment, taking the decision to move back to India and taking on, and it was I was in a very comfortable position in the US. Had a very good job, a very good salary. I was on the fast track for a green card. And I had to take a decision at that point to abandon the green card and sort of come back to India. And I think that was one pivotal moment which sort of shaped my career, and that got me into logistics. So in 2004, Jan 2004 is when I started with Writer in the cash logistics business as the business head, and that set the stage. And it was a major change for me, right? From a very white-collared business in consulting to get into a very blue-collared business where you're actually sort of dealing with ground operations. It was a bit of a culture shock for me, but I think I embraced that challenge and I sort of took it on, and I think that was sort of lay the foundation. And then the second part of your question was about what sort of inspired me to sort of start out on my own. So I think so the whole experience, if I look at my experience with Writer, I spent a good 10 years with them. First 4-5 years was in the cash logistics business, built that business from startup to number 2 in the industry, turned it profitable. So that gave me a lot of confidence that coming back from abroad, starting in a business that's a startup, taking it from a startup to number 2, and then turning it profitable, building the team, gave me a lot of confidence. Then within the same group, moving to their relocation business, which was a mature business, running their India operations as well as 6 countries, gave me further confidence that I could run sort of a fairly large and complex business. And then from there, moving into All Cargo, where I was again going back into a startup mode, where I was they were just starting their warehousing and contract logistics business. Going there as the president for that business, going back into a new business again and starting from scratch. I think these sort of experiences had, given me the sort of confidence that I can, start from zero, build a business, then run a large business across multiple countries, and then go back again to zero and start again. So I think this sort of laid the foundation for me. And then I think in All Cargo, if I look at it, when I was running the warehousing and contract logistics business, we saw a fairly large gap in the market at that point, right? Because we were doing warehousing for automobile companies, chemical companies, all of these enterprises. And what I saw was that there was a gap as far as SME went, right? There was no 3PL really focusing on the SME segment. So that was what and especially around that time, e-commerce was coming along. So we saw a lot of opportunity, and that sort of gave me the impetus to sort of move out of All Cargo and sort of start my own business. And another important thing was that I had a mentor, and I think this is very important for any young professional, is that you need to have some sort of a mentor. If you have different types of mentors also, right? If you're a professional, you'll have one type of a mentor who can help you in the professional journey. But if you want to make that transition from being a professional to an entrepreneur, the same mentor may not be the right one, right? So I had a mentor by the name of Dilip Nath, who also invested in Emiza. And he sort of had, because he himself, I was 40 at that time when I started Emiza, and he had that similar experience. He was a lawyer professionally, and then at the age of 40, he took a call to stop his profession of being a lawyer, and he started a business which then turned out to be very, very successful, right? So he gave me that confidence, saying that, look, Ajay, you've got a good idea, exit. I did it at that time, and I'm ready to back you. Whatever money you put in, I'll put an equal amount of money at that point, right? So that was sort of the foundation for this whole switch or change at that point of time. is an interesting question. So I think, see, like I said, I had a lot of confidence moving from, from whatever successes I had into my own business. But when I actually started my own business, I realized it's a completely different can of worms. And what I learned over there, I had to unlearn. So, so I think that was the biggest challenge. So when I say what I mean by unlearn, right? When you're running in a professional company, right, where there, and these are fairly large companies, whichever two companies I talked about, Writer and All Cargo, these were both, in thousands of crores, right? So they are companies which are very large. So you have some sort of a safety cushion over there. There is a team over there. There is a support structure over there. And as a professional, you get used to certain comforts, you know, which get very quickly taken away from you when you become an entrepreneur. So I'm used to having a team below me. I know I can, I have an HR person who I can go to. I have this, that, and the other, which the moment you start your own journey, that goes away. Number one. Number two is when you make mistakes on your own as an entrepreneur, it's very different from making mistakes when you are in a large company, because in a large company you can still have the ability to absorb those mistakes and move forward. Whereas as an entrepreneur with limited amount of capital, one mistake can be fatal. And that was what happened with us when we started our journey. The first 2 years, we were actually more into a different line of business, which was into LTL transportation, which was less than a truckload. And we had scaled that business up. And in fact, we did our Series A for that business and raised capital. But that business, even though we scaled it up, we were in about 30 cities. We had over 250 employees, over 100 customers. We were burning a lot of capital in that business. And we had gotten to a point where we had almost no money left. And then we had to take a very hard decision at that point. And my investors said that, look, if you want to shut down that business, that's up to you. And what you want to do after that is up to you, but we can't put in any more money. So that was one of the biggest, challenges. And that is what I said, right? We have to unlearn, right? So you have to unlearn everything and figure out now, how do you run a business with no money, with no support, right? And fortunately, we took a call, we shut down that business around September, October of 2018. And in Jan 2019, we pivoted to the current model of Emiza, which is the whole warehousing and fulfillment model for consumer businesses. So that pivotal journey of shutting down a business, being left with virtually no money, settling off all your debts in that business, starting a new business at the same time, was one of the most challenging times of our life. From 2018 till 2020 was a very, very tough time for us in the business. But fortunately, we prevailed because of the team. And that comes to the point about the team, right? So I think the business can always have its up and downs, right? And you may make wrong calls, but if you have the right people with you and the right team with you, you can come out of any situation or any challenge, right? And build a successful business. So the decision to shut down that business was a collective decision taken by the team, which was the right decision. The business that we got into, which is our current business, which has been very successful, was the right decision, which was again taken largely by the team and me, because my vision in terms of being able to see the opportunity, right? Like I said, that there was clearly e-commerce was booming. There was no 3PL at that point of time catering to this space. We saw the gap in the market, and then we went in there. And then the team sort of put their weight behind that decision, behind the vision, and we sort of went out and built it. Now the team comprised of a few key people. So a couple of them were people who were with me earlier in All Cargo, who sort of worked with me very closely. One of them is now my co-founder, and he sort of, what I admired most was that he had that belief, right? In spite of the setback we had, right, there was a strong belief, key boss, in the new vision of Emiza, which was to become a warehousing and fulfillment company. He backed that vision, right? Similarly, along the way, there were certain young people that we hired in Emiza, right? And I think youth is a blessing, is a big blessing. So some of the young people we hired, they stuck on and they built, they believed in the vision. And then from there, we sort of, built it out from there. think, like I said, the leadership style has to evolve primarily by creating leaders. I think that's the main thing, right? I think initial stage, like I said, you unlearn. You start from ground. Even when I started the business, I started back from the ground. You do everything, right? You start from being, uh, you play every role in the company, right? You have to play that, and then you have to start hiring people as you grow, and then you have to start believing in people, right? I think that's one thing fundamentally which I do is I believe in people, and sometimes it has bitten me also. It's not that it's worked every time. You sometimes you trust people and then they let you down, right? Or maybe the circumstances have let you down, right? You can't always blame the person, but circumstances can also let you down. So I think that is critical, that as a leader you start, you inspire, you create the vision, you be very involved, you work shoulder to shoulder with people, and then eventually you have to move to a point where you are then comfortable hiring people for those roles, delegating that responsibility to them, but then keeping a very tight control, right? After that, if you ask me what function I'm most aligned to, I'm basically a salesperson at heart, right? And I think every leader needs to figure out what is it that they are good at, right? So I figured out that relationships and sales is my strength. So in that, I think one critical thing that that we've talked about as sort of a value is I've absolutely total transparency with the customer, right? I think that is something that, it's always a tendency in sales to, oversell. People oversell and underdeliver. I always tell my team, key boss, be brutally honest with the client. It doesn't matter. Even if you lose the business, lose it, but don't lose the trust, right? So even if some people say, but sir, if I tell him this, he may not give me the business. I don't care if this is going to not give him, if this is going to make him decide not to give you the business, then maybe that's not the right customer for us, you know. So these are some of the things that I think have helped us sort of build trust. And I think finally, end of the day, right? If you have to build a brand, especially in a services space, in a product business is very different, right? The product speaks for itself, but in a services business, it's your reputation, it's the brand, right? So that brand has to be instilled in something. And I think trust, transparency, and performance, right? These are the three sort of pillars on which you can build a services business. And that is what I've learned. And that is what we sort of live by. I think if you ask me, I think it's always experiences, right? I think experiences teach you a lot, right? So I think it's all of these experiences that you've had, the setbacks that you've had, the successes that you've had. Uh, those have been sort of pivotal. Of course, my mentor was a critical being, taking the decision at 40, being in a very secure job with a very high pay, being in a very comfortable position. I think the point is you have to always, if you want to create wealth or you want to create a something which is a significant delta to where you are at, you have to embrace change. That is what I've realized, right? You look at my shift from the US back to India, change. Moving out of an industry where I was very set, moving into logistics from writer, 10 years in writer to all cargo, where people didn't know me, again, ready to accept change. Then being settled in all cargo, wanting to start again, you have to be ready to accept change. So these are the sort of the thing that you have to be ready to accept change, and you have to be ready to go back to zero. That's if you're ready to do these two things, I think you can take go places in your career. If you're not ready to do these two things, it's really difficult at that. See, again, I can talk from a services business point of view, right? I think innovating is what you're meeting the customer's requirement, right? Finally, end of the day, if you are listening to your customer, if you're building solid relationships with the customer, you're listening to his pain points, right? That will give you a lot of feedback in terms of what needs to be done or what needs to be improved, right? Then coming back internally and then figuring it out with your team, what's the best way to deliver it? What's the cheapest way to deliver it? What's the best way to achieve it? So I think this is where innovation will come out from, right? So I think it's a combination of the two, listening to your customer, then sort of working with the team, right? Figuring it out, right? And I think the main thing in any business is that customers will never pay you. It's very difficult to get a premium out of a customer, right? So you have to always find a way to be able to deliver that to the customer in the lowest possible cost. So that is where I think, your team's understanding, your ability to understand your operations, understand your service, understand those nuances, right? So deep understanding of the business only will help you figure out what you can do to sort of convert or deliver on that particular type of innovation to meet that need. So that's it. So I think success, right, is very subjective, right? I think success means different things to different people. I think for me personally, I think being extremely, if you're happy, right? I think, and again, that's a subject term. If you're happy and if you're basically content, I think that to me is achieving some level of success, right? If you are not at, if you're living with regrets, right? That I think is something that I think if you can avoid regrets, and how do you avoid regrets? Like I said, is you have to sometimes take those calls, right? Like I said, like when I took that call at 40, that was the one reason I said that, look, I don't want to be 50 and then regret I didn't take that call. And I can tell you now in hindsight that if I had not taken that call, I probably would be at some level regretting today. Even if I'd taken that call and I was unsuccessful, at least I would have said, I would felt ki boss maine kiya, I was unsuccessful, and I went back to a professional career, right? So not having regrets is one important, for me, a measure of success. Ki boss, you shouldn't have any regrets. That is number one. Number two is success, of course, in a business is, are you in two fronts. One is from a customer point of view is have you been able to sort of you know serve a significant demand in the market? Have you built a brand? Have you built something of reputation, which I think is very important. If customers are talking about you, if people are talking about you, and that is resulting in more business, word of mouth, I think that is, to me, word of mouth is a very important measure of success. How do you get your business? Second is, of course, financial success is very important. Your business has to be successful. It has to be profitable. You're not running a charitable organization. You have to be able to deliver profit at the end of the day. So I think that is the second measure. For me, from an investor point of view, to be able to, if you've taken on people's money, and there is a responsibility there, a big, deep responsibility. Are you able to live up to that responsibility? Are you able to give your investors an exit or a return? If you're able to do that, that to me is also a measure of success. And of course, within the team, if you've been able to, build a team, build leadership, create wealth for your employees, create opportunities for your employees, I think that to me is another measure of success. So this is kind of how I look at it.